The community center in Oceanside, California, had seen better days. Its gray walls were scuffed, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like tired bees. But on this Saturday morning, it was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled with people, all facing a makeshift stage where retired military working dogs would soon be auctioned off to new homes. Sarah Mitchell stood at the back of the room, her arms crossed over her chest. At 28, she had her father's steel-gray eyes and the same determined set to her jaw. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a plain blue sweater. Nothing about her appearance drew attention, which was exactly how she wanted it. She had driven 3 hours from San Diego for this auction. 3 hours to face something she had been avoiding for 10 years. 3 hours to maybe, just maybe, find the one piece of her father she thought was lost forever. A man in his 50s bumped into her without apologizing. He was wearing an expensive jacket and had the look of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. Sarah stepped aside and kept her eyes on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome," the auctioneer announced. He was a round man with a cheerful face and a voice that boomed through the crackling sound system. "Today, we have 12 exceptional animals looking for their forever homes. These dogs have served our country with honor. They deserve the best retirement we can give them." The crowd murmured in agreement. Sarah's heart began to pound. She had looked at the list of dogs online a dozen times. She had memorized every name, every breed, every age, but only one mattered to her. The first dog was led out by a handler, a German shepherd named Duke, 10 years old, bomb detection specialist. The bidding started immediately. Sarah watched as the price climbed higher and higher. When Duke was finally sold for $8,000, she felt her stomach tighten. She had saved $12,000 over the past 2 years. She hoped it would be enough. 3 more dogs came and went. A Belgian Malinois, 2 Labrador retrievers. Each one found a home with someone who had more money than Sarah could ever dream of having. She noticed the man in the expensive jacket bidding on several of them. He won one, a beautiful Malinois named Stella, with a casual raise of his hand at $15,000. "Next up," the auctioneer called, "we have a very special animal. This is Rex, an 11-year-old German shepherd, 3 tour in Afghanistan, explosive detection, over 200 confirmed finds. This dog has saved countless lives." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. 2 handlers walked onto the stage with a large German shepherd between them. Even from the back of the room, Sarah could see he was different from the others. He moved slowly with a slight limp in his back leg. His dark coat was graying around the muzzle, but his eyes were alert, intelligent, and searching. Those eyes, Sarah knew those eyes. "Now, folks," the auctioneer continued, "Rex here is getting up there in age, and he's got some arthritis in that back leg. Nothing serious, but he'll need a quiet home, someone who can give him the peaceful retirement he's earned. Let's start the bidding at $2,000. Hands shot up around the room. Sarah raised hers immediately. "2,000 from the lady in back. Do I hear 2,500? A woman in the third row raised her hand. 2,500. Do I hear 3,000? Sarah's hand went up again. Her heart was racing now. This was it. This was her father's dog. This was the dog that had been with Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell on that last mission. The dog that had survived when her father had not. The bidding continued. 4,000, 5,000. Sarah kept raising her hand, watching her savings disappear with each bid. At 7,000, most of the crowd had dropped out. Only 3 bidders remained. Sarah, a middle-aged couple in the front row, and the man in the expensive jacket. 8,000, the man called out, not even bothering to raise his hand. Sarah raised hers. 8,500. The man turned to look at her for the first time. His eyes were cold, assessing. He smirked. 10,000. The couple in front shook their heads and gave up. It was down to Sarah and this man. 11,000, Sarah said. her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. She had $1,000 left. 12,000, the man said immediately. Sarah's hand remained raised. 12,000. The auctioneer looked confused. Miss, the bid is already at 12,000. I know, Sarah said firmly. 12,000. The man in the jacket laughed. It was not a kind sound. 15,000, he said, settling back in his chair. Sarah felt the room tilt. 15,000. She had nothing left. She had worked overtime for 2 years. She had given up vacations, new clothes, dinners out with friends, all to save $12,000 for this moment. And it was not enough. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Wait, Sarah said, stepping forward. Her voice was louder now, desperate. Please wait. The auctioneer paused. The entire room turned to look at her. Sarah's face flushed, but she kept walking toward the stage. Miss, do you have a higher bid? No, I don't, Sarah admitted. But that's my father's dog. My father was Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell. He was a Navy SEAL. Rex was his partner. I've been looking for him for 10 years. The room went silent. Sarah could feel every eye on her. She hated being the center of attention. Her father had taught her to be strong, to be tough, to never show weakness. But right now, standing in front of all these strangers, she felt small and powerless. The man in the expensive jacket stood up. That's a nice story, sweetheart, really touching. But this is an auction, not a charity. The dog goes to the highest bidder, that's me. But you don't understand, Sarah started. I understand perfectly, the man interrupted. His voice was sharp, cutting. You can't afford the dog, I can. That's how the world works. Maybe if your father had made better career choices, you'd have more money. The insult hit Sarah like a physical blow. Around the room she heard people gasp. Someone muttered, that's out of line. But the man did not care. He looked at the auctioneer. Can we finish this? I have a tea time at noon. The auctioneer looked uncomfortable. Sir, maybe we could. Sold to me for 15,000, the man said firmly. Those are the rules, aren't they? The auctioneer's shoulders sagged. Going once, going twice. Sold to bidder number 47 for $15,000. The gavel came down. The sound echoed through Sarah's chest like a gunshot. She stood frozen as the handlers began to lead Rex off the stage. The dog had been calm throughout the auction, professionally trained to stay quiet in all situations. But as he passed by Sarah, something changed. Rex stopped walking, his head lifted, his nose working the air. The handlers tried to move him forward, but he planted his feet and would not budge. Come on, boy, one handler said gently. Let's go. But Rex was not listening to the handler. His entire body had gone rigid, his attention fixed on something, on someone. Sarah stood 10 feet away, tears streaming down her face. She had failed. She had lost her last connection to her father. And then, without thinking, she whispered the name only she and her father had known. The nickname they had used at home, away from the military, when Rex was not a working dog but part of their family. Rocket, she said softly. Every dog in the holding area behind the stage began to bark at once. It was chaos, sudden and loud. But on the stage, Rex went completely still. For a moment, nothing happened. Sarah held her breath. Then Rex pulled free from the handlers with a strength that surprised everyone. He ran across the stage, moving faster than an 11-year-old arthritic dog should be able to move. He did not run toward the man who had bought him. He ran straight toward Sarah. The German shepherd reached her and immediately sat at her feet, his body pressed against her legs. His tail wagged so hard his entire back end shook. He looked up at her with those intelligent eyes, and Sarah saw recognition there. Complete, absolute recognition. Rex remembered her. After 10 years, through everything he had been through, he remembered the little girl who had thrown tennis balls for him in the backyard, the teenager who had snuck him treats under the dinner table, the young woman who had hugged him goodbye before he and her father deployed for the last time. Sarah dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around the dog's neck. She buried her face in his fur and sobbed. Rex whined softly, licking her ear the way he used to when she was sad. The room had gone completely silent. Even the other dogs had stopped barking. The man in the expensive jacket marched toward them. "That dog is mine. I paid for him." Sarah looked up, her vision blurred with tears. "He knows me. He remembers me." "I don't care if he remembers you," the man snapped. "I bought him. He's my property now." One of the handlers, a young woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "Sir, maybe we should reconsider. The dog clearly has a bond with her." "A bond?" The man's face was red now. "I don't care about a bond. I care about what I paid for. That dog is coming home with me, and if she doesn't let go of him right now, I'm calling the police." Sarah's hands tightened in Rex's fur. She looked at the auctioneer, silently begging him to help. But the man just shook his head sadly. "I'm sorry, miss. The sale is final. The dog belongs to him now." Sarah felt the world crashing down around her. She had come so close. Rex was right here in her arms, and she was still going to lose him. The man reached down to grab Rex's collar. The dog growled, a low warning sound that Sarah had only heard a few times in her life, always when her father was threatened, always when Rex was protecting his family. "Don't you dare growl at me," the man said, pulling harder. And that was when Sarah made a decision. She stood up, placing herself between the man and Rex. "No," she said quietly. "What did you say to me?" "I said no." Sarah's voice was stronger now. "You're not taking him, not like this." The man's eyes narrowed. "You can't stop me. He's legally mine." Sarah looked him straight in the eye. "Then you're going to have to explain to everyone in this room why you're dragging a military hero away from the daughter of the man who died serving his country. You're going to have to explain why $15,000 means more to you than doing the right thing." Around them, Sarah could feel the mood in the room shifting. People were standing up, moving closer. She heard mutters of agreement, sounds of support. The man looked around and seemed to realize for the first time that he was surrounded by people who did not like him very much. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "The rules are the rules." "Then maybe the rules are wrong," Sarah said. She did not know what was going to happen next. All she knew was that she was not going to let Rex go, not without a fight. Her father had taught her to never give up, to never back down when something mattered. The standoff lasted for what felt like an eternity. Sarah stood her ground, one hand resting protectively on Rex's head. The German shepherd had positioned himself between her and the man in the expensive jacket, his body alert and ready. Around them, the crowd had formed a loose circle, watching, waiting. The man's face had gone from red to purple. "I'm calling my lawyer," he announced, pulling out his phone. "This is theft. You're stealing my property." "Your property?" An older man in the crowd spoke up. He was wearing a Navy veteran's cap, his face weathered and kind. "Son, that dog served 3 tours. He saved American lives. He's not property. He's a hero." "I don't care what he is," the man shot back. "I paid for him. That makes him mine." The auctioneer stepped forward, holding up his hands. "Folks, please, let's all calm down, sir." He turned to the man in the jacket. "Maybe we could work something out. Perhaps you'd be interested in one of the other dogs." "I want that dog," the man insisted. "I bid on that dog. I won that dog." Sarah's mind was racing. She needed time to think, to figure out what to do, but she could feel the situation spiraling out of control. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why do you want him so badly?" The man blinked, caught off guard by the question. "What?" "Why Rex?" Sarah pressed. "You bid on other dogs, you won Stella. Why do you need Rex too?" For a moment the man seemed uncomfortable. Then his expression hardened again. "I collect military dogs. I have a breeding program. Rex has excellent bloodlines and I want him for. He's 11 years old, Sarah interrupted. With arthritis, he can't breed, he can barely walk sometimes, so why do you really want him? The man's jaw clenched. He did not answer. The young female handler cleared her throat. Sir, if I may ask, what exactly is your experience with military working dogs? These animals require special care, especially the retired ones. They can have PTSD, anxiety-specific needs. I know how to take care of dogs, the man snapped. Have you had military dogs before? The handler persisted. Again the man did not answer. His silence spoke volumes. Sarah felt a surge of anger. You don't want him because you care about him. You want him because you can afford him. Because winning matters to you more than what's actually best for Rex. You don't know anything about me, the man said, but his voice lacked conviction now. I know you insulted my father, Sarah said quietly. A man you never met. A man who died protecting people like you. I know you think money gives you the right to anything you want. And I know that Rex deserves better than someone who sees him as a trophy. The crowd murmured in agreement. The man looked around and saw he was losing ground. Fine, he said abruptly. You want the dog so badly, buy him from me. $25,000 right now. Sarah felt her heart sink. I don't have $25,000. I don't even have $15,000. I told you that. Then I guess you don't want him that badly after all. The man's smile was cruel. If he really mattered to you, you'd find a way. Sarah wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to do something, anything. But she was trapped and they both knew it. The veteran in the Navy cap stepped forward. I'll put in $500 toward keeping Rex with Sarah. I'll add $300, a woman called from the crowd. Count me in for $1,000, another voice said. Within minutes, people were pledging money. Strangers, moved by Sarah's story and disgusted by the man's behavior, were offering what they could. Sarah watched in amazement as the total climbed. 2,000, 5,000, 8,000. But it was not enough. Even with everyone's generosity, they only reached $12,000. The man in the expensive jacket shook his head. Not enough, he said smugly. Guess you lose after all. Sarah felt desperation clawing at her chest. She looked down at Rex, who was looking up at her with complete trust. He had survived war. He had survived losing her father. And now he was going to end up with someone who did not care about him at all. Please, Sarah said, adding how her voice cracked. Please don't do this. The man shrugged. Business is business. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm taking my dog and leaving. He reached for Rex's collar again. This time the German shepherd did not just growl. He barked, sharp and loud, his teeth showing. It was a warning, clear and unmistakable. Control your animal, the man demanded, stepping back. He's not my animal, Sarah said. You just said he's yours, so you control him. The man glared at her. He pulled out his phone again. I'm calling animal control. This dog is dangerous. He attacked me. He didn't touch you, the female handler pointed out. He warned you. There's a difference. I don't care about the difference. I want him muzzled and I want him now. That was when the back doors of the community center opened. A woman in her 60s walked in, moving with purpose. She was dressed in a neat pantsuit, her gray hair cut short. She had the bearing of someone used to being in charge. What's going on here? She asked, her voice cutting through the chaos. The auctioneer straightened. Mrs. Chen, we weren't expecting you. Clearly, the woman said, looking around at the crowd. I was doing paperwork in the office and heard shouting. Someone want to explain. Mrs. Chen, Sarah learned, was the director of the organization running the auction. She listened carefully as multiple people tried to tell the story at once. Her expression remained neutral, but Sarah noticed her gaze kept returning to Rex, who had finally calmed down and was sitting pressed against Sarah's legs. When everyone had finished talking, Mrs. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Let me make sure I understand, she said finally. Mr. Hartley, you purchased Rex for $15,000. That's right, the man, Hartley said triumphantly. So the dog is mine. And Miss Mitchell, Mrs. Chen turned to Sarah, you claim Rex was your father's service dog. He was, Sarah said. My father was Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell. He and Rex were partners for 4 years. Rex was with him when he died. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry for your loss. When did your father pass? 10 years ago, Sarah said. August 15, 2016, Afghanistan, an IED. His team didn't make it back, but Rex did. The Navy told us Rex would be reassigned. I was 18. I didn't know I could adopt him. I didn't know anything. By the time I figured it out and started looking for him, he'd already been deployed with someone else. And you've been looking for him ever since. Sarah nodded. I check the retired dog lists every month. When I saw his name on this auction, I drove 3 hours to get here. I saved every penny I could, but it wasn't enough. Mrs. Chen looked at Hartley. And you want Rex for your breeding program? That's my business, Hartley said defensively. Actually, it becomes my business when it involves an animal we're rehoming, Mrs. Chen said coolly. Our organization's mission is to ensure these dogs get the best possible retirement. They've served their country. They deserve peace and care. I can provide that, Hartley insisted. Can you? Mrs. Chen walked over to Rex. The dog watched her but did not move from Sarah's side. This dog is clearly bonded to Miss Mitchell. He recognized her after 10 years. He responded to a name only she would know, and he's showing stress behaviors around you. That's because she's riled him up, Hartley argued. Mrs. Chen ignored him. She knelt down slowly, extending her hand to Rex. The German shepherd sniffed it politely but kept his attention on Sarah. Remarkable, Mrs. Chen murmured. She stood up and looked at the auctioneer. Do we have documentation of Rex's service record? The auctioneer nodded and pulled out a folder. He handed it to Mrs. Chen, who flipped through it quickly. It says here Rex served with Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell from 2012 to 2016. 4 years, 3 deployments. She looked up at Sarah. Can you verify your identity? Sarah pulled out her wallet with shaking hands. She showed Mrs. Chen her driver's license, then pulled out a small photograph she always carried. It showed a younger Sarah, maybe 17, sitting on the front steps of a house with Rex's head in her lap. Her father stood behind them in his Navy uniform, smiling. Mrs. Chen studied the photo carefully. Then she pulled out her own phone and made a call. This is Director Chen. I need you to look up a Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell, Navy SEALs, died August 2016. I need confirmation he had a service dog named Rex. She paused, listening. Yes, I'll wait. The community center was silent. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. After what felt like forever, Mrs. Chen nodded. Confirmed, thank you. She hung up and looked at Sarah with kind eyes. I'm very sorry for your loss. Your father was a hero. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Mrs. Chen turned to Hartley. Mr. Hartley, I'm going to have to void this sale. What? Hartley exploded. You can't do that. I won fair and square. Our contracts include a clause, Mrs. Chen said calmly, that allows us to void any sale if we determine the placement is not in the best interest of the animal. Rex has clearly shown a preference for Miss Mitchell. He has a documented history with her family. And frankly, your behavior today has raised serious concerns about your suitability as an adopter. This is ridiculous. Hartley's face was purple again. I'll sue you and this whole organization. That's your right, Mrs. Chen said, unruffled. But the sale is void. Your money will be refunded in full. You're welcome to bid on other dogs if you'd like, but Rex is no longer available. Hartley looked around the room, seeing nothing but unfriendly faces. Even the auctioneer was nodding in agreement with Mrs. Chen's decision. This is discrimination, Hartley sputtered. You can't just. I can and I have, Mrs. Chen said firmly. Now you can leave peacefully or I can have you escorted out. Your choice. For a moment, Sarah thought Hartley might actually start swinging, but he seemed to realize he was completely outnumbered. With a final venomous glare at Sarah, he turned and stormed out of the community center. The doors slammed behind him. The room erupted in applause. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. Rex stood up and leaned against her, as if sensing she needed support. Mrs. Chen smiled at her. Miss Mitchell, I believe you wanted to adopt Rex. Yes, Sarah said, more than anything, but I only have $12,000. Well, Mrs. Chen said thoughtfully, seeing as the sale to Mr. Hartley has been voided, we need to start the bidding over. And given the circumstances, I think we can set a special reserve price for Rex. Shall we say $12,000? Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. Really? Really, on one condition. Anything, Sarah said quickly. You keep in touch with our organization. Let us know how Rex is doing. These dogs are special to us. We like to know they're happy. I promise, Sarah said. I'll send updates every month if you want. That would be wonderful. Mrs. Chen extended her hand. Welcome to the family, Rex. Sarah shook her hand, barely able to believe what was happening. Around them, people were cheering and clapping. The veteran in the Navy cap came over and shook her hand too. Your father would be proud of you, he said gruffly. You didn't back down. Thank you, Sarah said. Thank you all, everyone who offered to help. Keep your money for taking care of that good boy, the veteran said, patting Rex's head. He's earned a comfortable retirement. Sarah knelt down and hugged Rex again. The German shepherd's tail wagged so hard she thought it might fly off. He licked her face, making her laugh through her tears. She had found him. After 10 years of searching, of hopping, of never giving up, she had found her father's dog. But as Sarah completed the adoption paperwork and prepared to take Rex home, she had no idea that the real challenge was just beginning. The drive back to Sarah's apartment in San Diego should have been the happiest 3 hours of her life. Rex sat in the back seat, his head resting on the center console so he could stay close to her. Every few minutes, Sarah would reach back and scratch his ears, still hardly believing he was really here. But about an hour into the drive, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Miss Mitchell, this is Donald Hartley. Sarah's hand tightened on the steering wheel. How did you get my number? That's not important, Hartley said, his voice cold. What's important is that you and I need to have a conversation. I don't think we have anything to talk about. Oh, but we do. You see, I don't like losing, and I don't like being humiliated in front of a room full of people, so I did some research on you. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What are you talking about? Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, age 28, works as a medical technician at Mercy Hospital, lives alone in a one-bedroom apartment on Grant Street, makes about $45,000 a year. He paused. Tell me, how exactly do you plan to take care of a dog with special needs on that salary? That's none of your business. I'm making it my business. See, I've already contacted a lawyer. I'm going to prove that you're not a suitable home for Rex. That dog needs expensive veterinary care, special food, medication for his arthritis. Can you afford all that? Sarah's heart was pounding. I'll find a way. Will you? Because I did some more digging. You've got student loans, don't you? About $80,000 worth. You're already struggling to make ends meet. How are you going to afford a dog on top of that? I said I'll find a way, Sarah repeated, her voice shaking. No, you won't. Because I'm going to make sure that dog ends up with me one way or another. I'll file complaints. I'll report you to animal control. I'll make your life so difficult that you'll be begging to give Rex back. Why are you doing this? Sarah demanded. Why do you care so much about one dog? There was a long pause. When Hartley spoke again, his voice was different, quieter but somehow more menacing. Because nobody embarrasses me like you did today. Nobody makes me look like a fool. You wanted to be a hero. Fine. But heroes have to be able to protect what they care about. And I'm going to prove that you can't protect Rex." The line went dead. Sarah pulled over to the side of the highway, her hands shaking too badly to drive. Rex whined from the back seat, sensing her distress. She reached back and held onto him, trying to calm down. Hartley was right about one thing. She was barely scraping by financially. Her apartment was tiny, barely big enough for her, let alone her and a large dog. The student loans from her medical tech training ate up a huge chunk of her paycheck every month. She had depleted her entire savings to adopt Rex. How was she going to afford his care? Sarah took a deep breath and pulled back onto the highway. She would figure it out. She had to. There was no way she was giving up Rex. Not after finally finding him. When they got back to her apartment, Sarah discovered the first problem. Her landlord, Mr. Peterson, was waiting in the parking lot. "Miss Mitchell," he said, his arms crossed, "I need to talk to you." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Hi, Mr. Peterson, this is Rex. I just adopted him. He's very well trained, I promise. He won't be any trouble." Mr. Peterson shook his head. "I'm sorry, but we have a no-pets policy. You signed the lease. You know the rules." "But he's not just a pet," Sarah argued. "He's a retired military working dog. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan." "I respect that, I really do. But the policy is clear. No animals, service dogs accepted. And Rex isn't a service dog for you, is he?" Sarah felt panic rising. "Mr. Peterson, please, I just got him today. I've been looking for him for 10 years. Isn't there any way?" "I'm sorry," Mr. Peterson said, and he did look genuinely apologetic. "But I've already got complaints from other tenants. Someone called about a large dog in the building. If I make an exception for you, I'll have to make exceptions for everyone." "Who complained?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "The call was anonymous," Mr. Peterson said. "But that doesn't matter. The rule is the rule. You've got until the end of the month to find somewhere else to live or find a new home for the dog. I'm sorry." He walked away, leaving Sarah standing in the parking lot with Rex sitting patiently at her feet. This was Hartley's work. It had to be. He had said he would make her life difficult, and he was wasting no time. Sarah led Rex upstairs to her apartment. It was even smaller than she remembered. The living room, kitchen, and bedroom were all basically one space. There was barely room for her furniture, let alone supplies for a large dog. But Rex didn't seem to care about the size. He explored every corner, sniffing everything, his tail wagging. When he finished his inspection, he came back to Sarah and sat down, looking up at her with those intelligent eyes. "We'll figure it out, boy," Sarah said, scratching his ears. "I promise." Over the next week, Sarah learned just how difficult Hartley planned to make things. On Monday, she got a call from Animal Control. Someone had filed a complaint that Rex was aggressive and dangerous. Sarah had to take time off work to meet with an inspector, who spent an hour evaluating Rex before concluding there was no issue. But the complaint went on record. On Tuesday, her car was towed from the hospital parking lot. She spent $200 and 4 hours getting it back. No one could explain why it had been towed. The paperwork said it was parked illegally, but Sarah had parked in the same spot for 3 years. On Wednesday, she came home to find an eviction notice on her door. Mr. Peterson looked embarrassed when she confronted him. "Someone sent photos to the building owner," he explained. "Photos of Rex in your apartment. The owner is threatening to sue me if I don't enforce the no pets policy. I'm sorry, Sarah, but you've got to be out by the end of the week." Sarah felt the walls closing in. She spent every evening searching for apartments that would accept large dogs, but every place that allowed pets wanted a huge deposit, money she didn't have. Some places wouldn't accept German Shepherds at all, claiming they were dangerous breeds. On Thursday, She got called into her supervisor's office at the hospital. "Sarah, we need to talk," her supervisor, Dr. Martinez, said. She was a kind woman in her 50s who had always been supportive. "I received a complaint about you." "A complaint about what?" "Someone called the hospital board claiming you've been distracted at work, that you made medication errors. They even provided dates and times." Sarah felt cold. "That's not true. I've never made a medication error. You can check my record." "I did," Dr. Martinez said. "Your record is spotless, but the complaint was very detailed. It mentioned specific patients, specific medications. The board has to investigate." "This is harassment," Sarah said. "Someone is targeting me." "Do you know who?" Sarah hesitated. If she told Dr. Martinez about Hartley, would it help or make things worse? I'm not sure." Dr. Martinez looked at her with concern. "Sarah, if someone is harassing you, you need to report it. Go to the police." "And tell them what? That a rich man is mad because I adopted a dog. They won't do anything." "You don't know that." But Sarah did know. She had no proof that Hartley was behind any of this. Everything was just barely within the bounds of legal, a complaint here, an anonymous tip there. Nothing that could be traced back to him directly. That night, Sarah sat on the floor of her apartment with Rex's head in her lap. She had $150 in her bank account. No savings, no place to live after tomorrow, and a job that was now under scrutiny because of false complaints. "I'm sorry, boy," she whispered to Rex. "I thought I could give you a good home. I thought I could take care of you, but maybe Hartley was right. Maybe I can't protect you." Rex licked her hand and whined softly. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She almost didn't answer it, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" "Sarah Mitchell." The voice was female, professional. "Yes." "My name is Commander Rebecca Walsh. I'm with the Navy's Military Working Dog Program. I understand you recently adopted a retired MWD named Rex." Sarah sat up straighter. "Yes, ma'am. Is something wrong?" "That depends. I've been receiving some concerning reports, claims that Rex is being neglected, that he's in an unsuitable home, that you're unable to care for him properly." "That's not true," Sarah said desperately. "I'm doing everything I can. Someone is lying about me, spreading false information." "I believe you," Commander Walsh said. Sarah stopped mid-sentence. "You do." "The person filing these reports is Donald Hartley. We're familiar with him. He's tried to acquire military working dogs before. We've always refused him. The man has no business owning these animals." "Then why are you calling me?" "Because unfortunately, Mr. Hartley has some powerful friends. He's putting pressure on our program, threatening lawsuits, making a lot of noise. My superiors are starting to ask questions. They want to know if Rex really is in a good home." Sarah felt tears welling up. "I'm trying, Commander, I really am, but Hartley is making it impossible. He's getting me evicted. He's harassing me at work. I don't know how much more I can take." There was a long pause. Then Commander Walsh said, "Can you meet me tomorrow? I'm in San Diego for meetings. There's something I need to tell you about your father and Rex, something that might help." "What is it?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the Navy Memorial Park at noon?" "I'll be there," Sarah said. "Good, and Sarah, don't give up on Rex. Your father never gave up on anything. I don't think his daughter will either." The line went dead. Sarah looked down at Rex, who was watching her with those calm, intelligent eyes. "What did Dad get us into, boy?" she asked softly. Rex just put his paw on her knee, the same way he used to when she was a teenager and upset about something. Sarah made a decision. She didn't know what Commander Walsh wanted to tell her. She didn't know how she was going to solve any of her problems, but she knew one thing for certain. Sarah arrived at Navy Memorial Park 15 minutes early. She had called in sick to work, a lie that made her feel guilty, but she needed to know what Commander Walsh had to say. Rex walked beside her, his limp barely noticeable today. The cool morning air seemed to energize him. Commander Rebecca Walsh was easy to spot. She stood by the memorial wall, a tall woman in her 50s wearing a Navy uniform, her posture military straight. As Sarah approached, the commander turned and smiled. "You must be Sarah, you look like your father." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "You knew him." "I did. Jim Mitchell was one of the best SEAL team leaders I ever worked with." Commander Walsh knelt down and offered her hand to Rex. The German shepherd sniffed it politely, then sat at attention. "And this is the legendary rocket. Jim used to tell everyone that Rex could detect explosives from 100 yards away. Saved his team more times than anyone could count." "Why did you want to meet?" Sarah asked. Commander Walsh stood up and gestured toward a bench. They sat down together, Rex lying at Sarah's feet. "I wanted to meet because what's happening to you isn't right," the commander said. "Donald Hartley is a bully with too much money and too much time. He's been trying to get military dogs for years. We always refused him because our background checks revealed he's more interested in status and breeding programs than actually caring for these animals." "Can't you do something about him?" Sarah asked. "Unfortunately, our authority ends once the dogs are retired and auctioned. After that, they're considered civilian animals, but I can tell you something that might help you." Commander Walsh pulled out a folder. "This is Rex's complete service record. Every deployment, every mission, every commendation. Did you know your father filed paperwork before his last deployment?" Sarah shook her head. "What kind of paperwork?" "A request that if anything happened to him, Rex should be offered to his family first before being reassigned. It was denied because you were only 18 at the time, and the Navy needed Rex for active duty. But the request was in his file. It shows intent. It shows that your father wanted you to have Rex." Sarah took the folder with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of documents, photos, mission reports. There was even a picture of her father and Rex together, both of them covered in dust, her father's hand resting on the dog's head. "Why are you giving me this?" Sarah asked. "Because you're going to need proof that Rex belongs with you. Hartley isn't going to stop. He's filed a petition with the county claiming Rex is a dangerous animal that needs to be seized. The hearing is in 2 weeks." Sarah felt like she'd been punched. "He can do that." "He can try, but this documentation shows Rex's training, his temperament, his service record. It proves he's not dangerous, and if you can get a good lawyer, you might be able to fight this." "I can't afford a lawyer," Sarah said quietly. Commander Walsh was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out a business card. "This is Captain Michael Torres. He's retired Navy JAG, that's Judge Advocate General military lawyer. He volunteers his time helping veterans and their families. I already talked to him about your situation. He said he'd take your case pro bono if you're interested." Sarah stared at the card. "Why would he do that?" "Because your father saved his son's life. Captain Torres' son was on your father's team when that IED went off. The kid survived because your father and Rex found the second device before the team walked into it. Torres has been looking for a way to repay that debt for 10 years. Sarah couldn't speak. She just clutched the card and nodded. "There's something else," Commander Walsh said. "I've been making calls. I found a veteran who runs a boarding facility for retired military and police dogs. She's got space, and she'd be willing to work out a payment plan with you until you get back on your feet. It's not ideal, but it means Rex would have somewhere to stay while you fight this legal battle and find a new apartment." "I don't want to give him up, even temporarily," Sarah said. "I understand, but right now, Hartley is using your housing situation against you. If Rex is in a certified boarding facility with proper care, it takes away one of his main arguments." Sarah looked down at Rex. The dog was watching her calmly, trusting her to make the right decision. That afternoon, Sarah met with Captain Torres at his office. He was a stocky man with gray hair and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. "Your father was a good man," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "My son talks about him all the time, says he was the best commander he ever served under." "Thank you," Sarah said. They spent 2 hours going through everything. Sarah told him about the auction, about Hartley's harassment, about the eviction and the complaints at work. Captain Torres took notes and asked questions. "This is a clear case of harassment," he said finally. "The problem is proving Hartley is behind all of it. The complaints are anonymous. The towing, the eviction, technically legal, even if the timing is suspicious. So there's nothing we can do." "I didn't say that," Captain Torres smiled. "We fight this the way your father would strategically. First, we deal with the dangerous dog petition. We use Rex's service record to prove he's not a threat. Then we file a restraining order against Hartley for harassment, and we make it very public. Hartley is trying to use his money and influence to bully you. Let's see how he likes it when the media gets involved." Over the next week, Sarah threw herself into preparation. She temporarily moved Rex to the boarding facility Commander Walsh had recommended. It broke her heart to leave him there, but the facility was clean, professional, and the owner, a former Marine named Jennifer, clearly loved the dogs in her care. "He'll be safe here," Jennifer assured Sarah, "and you can visit any time." Sarah visited every day after work. She'd spend an hour with Rex, walking him, brushing him, just sitting with him. He seemed to understand that this was temporary. He never reproached her, never seemed upset. He just seemed happy to see her. Meanwhile, Captain Torres was building their case. He collected testimonials from people who had been at the auction. He got statements from the handlers who had worked with Rex. He even tracked down members of her father's old SEAL team, who were more than willing to speak on behalf of Jim Mitchell's daughter. The dangerous dog hearing was held in a small courtroom on a Wednesday morning. Sarah wore the only suit she owned, a navy blue one she'd bought for job interviews. Captain Torres sat beside her, confident and calm. Hartley sat on the other side of the courtroom with two expensive-looking lawyers. He smirked when he saw Sarah. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the petition, then looked at Hartley's lawyers. "You're claiming this dog is dangerous based on what evidence?" One of Hartley's lawyers stood up. "Your Honor, the dog showed aggressive behavior at the auction. He growled and displayed his teeth. There have been multiple complaints about the dog's behavior since then." "Anonymous complaints," Captain Torres interjected. "Not a single one with a verified witness." The judge looked at the file. "I see the dog's service record here. 3 tour of duty, over 200 successful explosive detections, 0 incidents of biting or attacking humans. That's quite impressive." "Military dogs are trained to be aggressive," Hartley's lawyer argued. "That makes them dangerous in civilian settings." "Actually," Captain Torres said, standing up, "military dogs are trained to be controlled and disciplined. They're taught to respond to threats appropriately, not to attack indiscriminately. I'd like to call Commander Rebecca Walsh to testify about Rex's training and temperament." Over the next hour, Commander Walsh explained Rex's training in detail. She was followed by one of the handlers from the auction, who testified that Rex had shown no aggression, only protective behavior when Hartley tried to grab him roughly. Then Captain Torres called Jennifer from the boarding facility. "I've been caring for Rex for the past week," she testified. "He's been a perfect gentleman, gentle, obedient, friendly with other dogs and people. I've worked with hundreds of retired military and police dogs. Rex is one of the best-behaved animals I've ever seen." Finally, Captain Torres called Sarah to the stand. "Miss Mitchell, can you tell us about your relationship with Rex?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Rex was my father's partner for 4 years. He lived with us when they weren't deployed. He was part of our family. He slept in my room. He played fetch with me in the backyard. When my father died, Rex was the only thing I had left of him. I've spent 10 years looking for him, not because I want a dangerous dog, because I love him, because he's family." She could see some people in the courtroom wiping their eyes. Hartley's lawyer cross-examined her. "Miss Mitchell, isn't it true that you can barely afford to take care of yourself, let alone a dog with special needs?" "I'm doing my best," Sarah said steadily. "Your best? You're living in a boarding facility because you got evicted. You're under investigation at work. How is any of that your best?" "Objection," Captain Torres said. "The witness is not on trial here. The dog's temperament is the only relevant issue." "Sustained," the judge said. "Counselor, stick to the matter at hand." Hartley's lawyer tried a different approach. "Miss Mitchell, when Rex saw you at the auction, he broke free from his handlers and ran at you. Isn't that dangerous behavior?" "He recognized me," Sarah said. "He was happy to see me. That's not dangerous. That's love." The lawyer sneered. "You're anthropomorphizing an animal." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I'm telling you what happened. Rex knew me. After 10 years he knew me, and he trusted me to take care of him. I'm not going to let him down." The judge called for a recess. Sarah sat with Captain Torres, her hands shaking. "You did great," he assured her. "What if we lose?" "We won't." But Sarah couldn't share his confidence. She'd seen the way Hartley's lawyers had twisted everything, made her sound incompetent and irresponsible. When court resumed, the judge looked at both parties. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony. Mr. Hartley, your petition claims that Rex is a dangerous dog who should be seized. However, I see no credible evidence to support this claim. The incident at the auction appears to have been protective behavior, not aggression. The dog service record is exemplary, and every expert who has testified today has stated that Rex is well-behaved and poses no threat to public safety." Sarah felt hope rising in her chest. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I'm troubled by the timing and nature of this petition. It appears to be less about public safety and more about a personal dispute. Miss Mitchell, you have custody of Rex. Mr. Hartley, your petition is denied." The gavel came down. Sarah wanted to cry with relief. Beside her, Captain Torres was smiling. But as they left the courtroom, Hartley blocked their path. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Actually, it is," Captain Torres said. "We're filing a restraining order against you tomorrow, and we're calling a press conference. I think the public will be very interested to hear about a wealthy businessman harassing a veteran's daughter." Hartley's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," Captain Torres said. They walked past him, but Sarah could feel Hartley's glare burning into her back. That evening, Sarah picked up Rex from the boarding facility. Jennifer helped her load his supplies into her car. "Where will you go?" Jennifer asked. "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted, "but we'll figure it out." As she drove away, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but she answered it anyway. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" "Yes." "My name is Tom Bradley. I'm a reporter with the San Diego Tribune. I heard about what happened in court today. I'd like to do a story about you and Rex." Sarah pulled over. "How did you know about the court case?" "Captain Torres gave me a call. He thought people should know what you've been going through. Would you be willing to talk to me?" Sarah looked at Rex in the rearview mirror. "Yes," she said, "I would." The article ran 3 days later on the front page of the local section. The headline read, "Navy SEAL's daughter fights to keep father's dog." The story detailed everything: the auction, Hartley's harassment, the court case. It included a photo of Sarah and Rex together, and an old photo of her father in his uniform with Rex at his side. The response was overwhelming. Sarah's phone didn't stop ringing. People wanted to help. A local apartment complex called to offer her a unit that allowed large dogs at a reduced rate. A veterinary clinic offered free care for Rex for the first year. Donations poured in, more than enough to cover the costs she'd incurred fighting Hartley. But the most unexpected call came from Commander Walsh. "Sarah, have you been watching the news?" "No, why?" "Turn it on, Channel 7. Sarah found a TV and turned it on. A news anchor was talking about Hartley. Investigation into Donald Hartley's breeding operation has uncovered evidence of animal neglect and illegal practices. Hartley, who made headlines this week for his legal battle over a retired military dog, is now facing multiple charges related to his treatment of animals. Several dogs have been seized from his property. Sarah watched in shock as footage showed dogs being let out of Hartley's estate. Some were clearly in poor condition. "How did this happen?" she asked Commander Walsh. "Once your story went public, other people started coming forward. People who had sold dogs to Hartley and then regretted it. People who had seen conditions at his property. The media attention opened the floodgates. Hartley's being investigated for fraud and animal cruelty." Sarah sat down heavily. "I can't believe it." "Believe it. Sometimes doing the right thing has a way of exposing the people doing wrong. Your father would be proud of you, Sarah." After they hung up, Sarah went to Rex and knelt beside him. The German shepherd licked her face, his tail wagging. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "We really did it." 2 weeks later, Sarah moved into her new apartment. It was bigger than her old place, with a small yard where Rex could lie in the sun. Her first night there, she sat on the floor with Rex's head in her lap, looking at the photos she'd hung on the wall. Her father in his uniform, her father with Rex, the whole family together before everything changed. "I miss him," she told Rex. "Every day I miss him." Rex whined softly and pressed closer to her. "But I have you, and somehow that makes it a little easier." Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Captain Torres. "Saw the news, Hartley's in serious trouble. You fought hard and won. Your father would be proud." Sarah smiled. She typed back, "We fought hard, thank you for everything." She set the phone down and looked at Rex. "You know what, boy? I think Dad knew exactly what he was doing when he put in that paperwork. He knew that someday we'd need each other. He knew you'd take care of me, the same way you took care of him." Rex's tail thumped against the floor. "So here's the deal," Sarah said, scratching his ears. "We take care of each other, no matter what deal." Rex barked once, sharp and clear. Sarah laughed. It felt good to laugh again. "I'll take that as a yes." That night, for the first time in 10 years, Sarah slept peacefully. Rex lay on a bed beside hers, his breathing steady and calm. She had her father's dog, she had a home, she had people who cared about her. She had one. And somewhere, Sarah liked to think her father was smiling, knowing that his daughter and his dog had found their way back to each other.